up, everybody? Today we are continuing with the world after World War II. That's right. So we're going to talk about some of the Cold War stuff, and then we're going to hit on Germany a little bit. Not like hit on her, but like touch on that. Not touch on. Let me rephrase. We are going to talk about Germany after World War II, and especially everything that happened as far as the communism versus the democracy stuff. So the Cold War, as you all know, you guys have been beat over the head with this stuff, was tensions between the United States and the Soviet Union after World War II. We didn't like their government, they didn't like our government, we hated each other, and we were always almost ready to fight. That's what the Cold War is, where it's like you stage each other and you kind of look like you're going to fight, but you don't actually fight. So it's a bunch of trash talking, and we're going to kill you, you're going to kill me, whatever, and nothing actually happened. Not really. So each side wanted to spread their government to other countries. We in the United States, we didn't want countries turning communist. And the Soviet Union, they didn't want countries turning democracy or democratic, sorry. So each side wanted to spread their governments to other places. And we especially didn't want the Soviet Union to spread communism close to us. We would have thought it was really terrible, say, if Canada turned to communism, or Mexico would turn to communism, or Cuba, right? Cuban Missile Crisis. We didn't want any of those countries turning communist and Soviet Union setting up shop close to us and maybe sending some missiles our way. So the same thing worked for the Soviet Union. They didn't want democracies close to them, the communist countries close to them, so it's kind of insulated them. They set up something called the Warsaw Pact. The Warsaw Pact was an alliance of communist countries after World War II. Reese, what was that Warsaw Pact? That's right, an alliance of communist countries after World War II. Well, the democratic countries couldn't just have that, right? They needed their own alliance. And so they started NATO. NATO is an alliance of democratic countries after World War II. So you have Warsaw Pact over here, commies, and you had NATO over here, democracies, and they did not get along, right? There was a ton of money spent on weaponry, especially eventually nuclear weapons, right? We wanted to blow up the world 1,000 times if the Soviet Union attacked us, and they likewise wanted to blow up the world 1,000 times if we attacked them. And so since we had these weapons of mass destruction, each side was very careful because they didn't want to really upset or antagonize the other country too much and force that red button to be pushed, right? And send nukes over somewhere. At this time, a lot of Eastern Europe, like we've talked about, was communist, right? They're close to the Soviet Union, Russia, and the rest, the Western side of Europe was democracies, and that's England and France, etc. Okay? So Western Europe at this time, after World War II, they started to thrive. England and France, they rebuilt quickly with our money and our help, and they became powerful again. Whereas Eastern Europe, they struggled. Their countries were not as successful, and they struggled a lot monetarily and with their people. They did not like communism, and so they kind of were rebellious against the Soviet Union. And you're going to find there's still a lot of tension, even like today, where the Russians are at the border of a country trying to push themselves on these countries that they thought they had after World War II. Even though communism has collapsed in the Soviet Union, is no longer. It's just Russia. Germany, however, after World War II, we couldn't just give it to the Soviet Union, and they weren't just going to give that to us. So what happened was we, along with the Soviet Union, decided to split Germany. It's weird, right? But by splitting a country, you make it weaker. Now they don't have one army, there's two armies. And if you attack one army, this one doesn't care. So by splitting the country, you weaken it significantly. And so there was an East Germany, which was communist, and a West Germany, which was democratic. Think of splitting the United States. Wow. We split the United States, and there's an East and a West side of the United States. It would weaken us tremendously. One side would be communist, one side would be democratic. It would be weird. But that's what they did in Germany. They cut it in half. They said, okay, this side is communist, this side is democratic. But not only that, there was a big city in East Germany called Berlin. And Berlin, being their capital, was like the big city. Think of New York City, if you will. And we did not just want that to be communist. So we said, okay, you can have that side of Germany, but Berlin, we're going to split too. And so even though Berlin was in the east, they split that city. They cut it in half, and one side was communist, one side was democratic. Kind of weird, right? It's in the east, it should just be communist. But we weren't going to give it up. So Berlin was split. The communists did not like this, and initially they cut off the city. They wouldn't allow anything into the city from us. And so we had to do the Berlin airlift. We sent planes over the top of Berlin, and we dropped food and supplies and everything to the people in West Berlin so they could survive. Eventually, the communists started to allow us into Berlin, and so we didn't have to do the Berlin airlift anymore. But they decided, hey, we're going to build a wall around that part. We're going to build a wall around our side, the west side of Berlin. And so they walled in the democratic people, because a lot of people from the communist side said, communism sucks. We're going over to the other side of the city where we can live as a democratic people. And so they would escape to the west side. The communists built that wall so their people could no longer escape into West Berlin and become democratic people. They didn't like their people fleeing to our side. So the Berlin Wall was built, and it stopped people from leaving the communist side and going into the democratic side. It didn't work all that well. People still found their way into West Berlin and into the democratic side, and from there they could flee to other countries or to the other side of Germany. So that's it for today. Now, I don't want to give an assignment, so you only have to write down 2 words today. Write down Berlin airlift for your assignment. That's all you got to do. Berlin airlift, and that's your assignment for today. If you watch this video, you're all good. You're going to get your points. Woo! I'll talk to you tomorrow.